Clara, you've embarrassed us. Do you understand what this looks like? Before we continue this story, kindly click on the subscribe button. Trust me, you wouldn't want to miss the next story. They said love was supposed to bring people together. But in the town of Willow Creek, love was something that drew lines. The night it happened, the wind was wild enough to shake the shutters, and the rain had that heavy, Old Testament rhythm, the kind that made folks believe heaven was watching. In the corner house on Maple Road, beneath a roof her father built with his own hands, Clara Jameson was about to lose everything she'd ever called home. Dinner had gone cold. The roast sat untouched. The candles burned lower than they should have. And the silence, it stretched longer than the storm. Her father, Thomas Jameson, had the kind of presence that made even his silence sound like a verdict. Decades of respect built from running the biggest farm in 3 counties. Her mother, Margaret, sat beside him, hands perfectly folded, pearls tied around her throat, the picture of Southern composure. Across from them sat Noah Carter. Broad-shouldered, calm-eyed, a man who spoke with quiet honesty. His skin was the color of the very soil Thomas prided himself on owning, rich, enduring, and alive. Clara had imagined this dinner 100 ways. None of them ended like this. So, Thomas finally said, voice like gravel under tires. You thought this was the way to tell us? Clara straightened her shoulders. I didn't want to hide anymore. Her father looked at Noah. And you think this is love? Noah nodded. I do, sir. I know it is. Margaret set her fork down gently, the sound sharper than thunder. Clara, you've embarrassed us. Do you understand what this looks like? Like 2 people in love, Clara said, trying to keep her voice from breaking. Thomas laughed once, short, bitter. You could have had anyone. And you choose him? A mechanic from the South End? What happens when people find out the Jameson girl is living with? Stop. Clara's voice cut through the air like glass. You raised me to believe hard work matters. That character matters more than wealth. Don't you dare twist that now. Thomas slammed his fist on the table. The chandelier rattled. The storm answered outside. You are no daughter of mine if you walk out that door, he said. The words fell heavy, not shouted, but final. Clara's heart pounded so hard it hurt to breathe. Noah didn't move, but his hand found hers beneath the table. He didn't plead. Didn't argue. Just held on. And that was enough. When she stood, her chair scraped back like thunder. Margaret's lips trembled. Clara, don't you see what you're doing? You'll ruin your life for him. No, Clara said softly. I'm saving it. Then she walked out. The door slammed behind her, and in that instant, the house that once felt like the world became just a structure, wood and pride and memories. Outside, the rain hit her face like truth. Noah's old pickup waited by the curb, headlights dim, engine humming like a heartbeat. He reached out, took her bag, and opened the door. Are you sure? He asked quietly. She looked back at the glowing windows of the home she'd just left. I've never been more sure, she said. They drove in silence for miles, the road slick and shining under the downpour. Willow Creek blurred behind them, the town that raised her but never really knew her. The small apartment Noah rented sat above his garage. It smelled like soap, oil, and the faint sweetness of pine air freshener. He apologized as soon as they stepped inside. It's not much. Clara smiled faintly. It's real. She hung her wet coat by the door, toes curling against the cracked linoleum. There were 2 mismatched chairs, 1 lamp that flickered, and a small kitchen that buzzed when the fridge kicked in. Still, it felt warmer than her parents' house had in years. They sat on the couch, hand-me-down, springs tired but soft, and shared instant noodles from paper bowls. Steam curled between them. It wasn't comfort food, but it was comfort. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time it didn't sound angry. It sounded like applause. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling fan turning lazily, thinking about all the moments that had led here, Her father's laugh when he taught her to ride a horse, her mother's perfume lingering in the hall, the smell of summer wheat. All of it, gone in one slammed door. Noah stirred beside her. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just thinking." He reached for her hand. "You didn't have to do that for me." "I didn't," she whispered. "I did it for us." Outside, the rain began to ease, tapping gently like a lullaby. And for the first time in a long time, Clara slept without pretending to be someone else. Morning sunlight broke through thin curtains. The air was clean, the sky washed pale blue. Clara made coffee in a chipped mug and watched Noah tighten bolts on an old Chevy outside, grease on his knuckles, a soft hum under his breath. The world didn't look different, but she felt different in it. Freer. Raw. Alive. Still, there was pain. It came in small flashes, like checking her phone and finding no messages. Her mother had blocked her. Her father hadn't tried. Noah saw the ache in her face but didn't pry. He just took her hand whenever she drifted too far into silence. Days turned into weeks. Clara picked up shifts at the local diner, wiping counters and pouring coffee for people who still whispered her last name like it was a headline. The Jameson girl. The one who threw it all away. Noah's shop stayed busy enough to keep the lights on, barely. He'd work late, come home with tired eyes, and still find a way to make her laugh. Some nights, they'd sit on the back steps, wrapped in one blanket, watching the moon climb slow over the pines. One night she said, "Do you ever regret it? That I came with you?" He smiled faintly, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Clara, everything good I've ever known started hard." She leaned her head on his shoulder. Somewhere deep down, she believed him. By the end of that month, Noah got a call. An old neighbor. His grandfather's land, the small farm out near County Line Road, had officially passed to him. Deed and all. He hadn't been there in years. Said it was just dust and fences now. Clara looked up from the sink. "Still yours though." He shrugged. "What's the point of holding on to dead dirt?" She dried her hands. "Maybe because you're meant to bring it back to life." He laughed softly. "You sound like him. My granddad used to say that every field's got a heartbeat. You just gotta listen close enough." Clara smiled. "Then let's go listen." They drove out the next morning. The sun hung low and golden over the hills. The road grew narrower, lined with wildflowers and faded signs. When they finally pulled up, the house stood small and weathered, paint peeling, porch sagging, grass tall enough to hide secrets. A crow called from the fence post like it was greeting them. Clara stepped out first, boots crunching the gravel. "This place feels like it's been waiting," she said quietly. Noah didn't answer right away. He just walked the perimeter, running his hand along the railings, eyes scanning the old barn, the windmill, the creek shimmering at the far edge. Something about it stirred a memory he couldn't quite name. Inside, dust lay thick but soft. Photos hung crooked on the wall, a younger version of his grandfather in overalls, smiling in the sunlight. On the kitchen table sat an old cigar box, covered in dirt. Inside, a folded map, yellowed and delicate. Clara traced the lines. "What's this?" He squinted. "Property lines. Creek, fence, something marked here." A small X sat just beyond the barn. Probably nothing. But something in Noah's chest felt strange, like the land was humming. That night, they didn't drive back. They found an old mattress, laid out sleeping bags, and watched the stars through the broken roof beams. "This is crazy," Clara said, laughing softly. "Yeah," he said, smiling. "But maybe crazy's the right place to start." The wind rustled through the dry grass outside. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and the sound echoed across the open field, wild, lonely, and alive. Morning came soft and gold over County Line Road. The world smelled like wet earth and old wood. Clara woke to sunlight slipping through cracks in the wall, turning the dust into floating gold. Noah was already outside, sleeves rolled, a wrench in his hand, talking to himself as he tried to coax life into an ancient water pump. She smiled watching him. This was a man who fixed things not because it was easy, but because he believed everything deserved one more chance. Clara stepped barefoot onto the porch, coffee mug steaming in her hands. "You think it'll work?" He looked up, grease on his cheek, grin easy. "Only one way to find out." He gave the handle a firm push. The pump sputtered, groaned, and spat a line of muddy water before clearing into a clean, steady stream. They laughed, not because it was much, but because it was theirs. By noon, they'd swept out the kitchen, patched a hole in the roof, and carried boxes of old farm tools out to the barn. The place still looked rough, but it was changing, the kind of change that happens when hands love something enough to touch it again. Clara found a small drawer near the sink with old letters bundled in twine. The ink had faded, but one signature appeared over and over: Harlan Carter, Noah's grandfather. Most were bills, supply orders, notes about livestock. But one letter stopped her, written on mining company stationery. She frowned, reading the name aloud: Fleming Mining and Company. Noah wiped his hands and leaned over her shoulder. "My granddad worked with miners before he bought this land," he said. "They pulled gold from the hills for a while. Thought it ran dry." Clara tapped the paper. "Then why'd he keep this?" He shrugged. "Maybe for the same reason he kept the land." Outside, wind rippled through the grass. The trees whispered like they were listening. Later that week, they drove into town for supplies. People stared. Whispers followed like shadows. The man at the feed store gave Noah a tight smile, then turned to Clara. "You sure about this place, ma'am? Ain't much left out there." "We'll make it work," she said simply. He chuckled under his breath. "Hope your folks don't mind the company you keep." Noah's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He just paid for the nails and rope, thanked the man, and walked out. In the truck, Clara reached for his hand. "Don't let them get in your head." He gave a quiet nod, eyes on the road. "I'm used to it." "You don't have to be." She squeezed his fingers. "Then I'll just get used to it with you." The days were long and honest. They worked side by side, mending fences, clearing the barn, hauling out years of dust. At night, they'd sit on the porch swing, sharing cheap wine and bigger dreams. Sometimes she'd read aloud from her journal, notes about how they'd fix the house, things she wanted to plant, names for future dogs they couldn't afford yet. Noah would listen, smiling quietly, the kind of man who didn't talk about hope, he built it piece by piece. The nights grew colder. She'd wake sometimes to find him outside, standing by the field, looking out at the dark hills. "What are you thinking?" she asked one night, wrapping a blanket around herself. He hesitated. "That maybe this land's got more to say than we've heard." "Meaning?" He pointed toward the old creek bed. "There's an echo there. I used to come here as a kid, listen to it. Granddad said the earth remembers what we forget." Clara smiled. "Then maybe it's time we listen again." A week later, they invited a neighbor over, Ruth Maynard, a widow in her 60s with sharp eyes and a soft laugh. She'd lived down the road her whole life. When she saw Clara hanging laundry on the line, she stopped her truck, stepped out, and said, "You're the Jameson girl, ain't you?" Clara froze for a second, then nodded. "I was." Ruth chuckled. "Town's been talking. Said you went and ran off with that Carter boy. Thought I'd see for myself if you were crazy or brave." "Maybe both," Clara said with a grin. Ruth winked. "Good answer." She stayed for pie that afternoon, telling stories about the old days, about how Noah's grandfather had fought to keep his land when the mining company tried to buy it for next to nothing. "They said there wasn't any gold left," Ruth said, leaning back in her chair. "But Harlan never believed him. He used to say, 'God don't hide blessings. He just waits until you're humble enough to see them.'" Noah's hand stilled around his cup. Clara felt a shiver down her spine. "Did he ever say where he thought it was?" Ruth shrugged. Somewhere near the creek, I reckon. Said the land would tell when the time was right. When Ruth left, Clara turned to Noah. That map in the cigar box, the X was near the creek. He nodded slowly. Coincidence maybe. She smiled. Or maybe not. The next morning, they walked down to the creek with shovels, not expecting much. Dew soaked their boots, sunlight cut through the trees in soft bands. The air smelled faintly metallic, the kind of scent that didn't belong to water or soil. They dug for a while, laughing at themselves. It felt ridiculous. After an hour, Noah hit something solid. A dull clang. He knelt, brushed away dirt. A rusted metal corner peeked through. Probably an old box, he said. Together they unearthed it, heavy, iron, locked tight. The lid gave after some prying. Inside, wrapped in waxed cloth, were folded documents. Fleming Mining and Company. Leases. Signatures. A name, Harlan Carter. And a note scrawled in the corner, hold fast. The truth's beneath our feet. Clara's breath caught. Noah, what if? He shook his head, stunned. If this is real, my grandfather owned the mineral rights they claimed were worthless. The air seemed to thicken. Wind rushed through the grass, carrying a sound that almost felt like laughter, bold, triumphant, free. They carried the box back to the house, spreading the papers out on the table like a puzzle. Some were too faded to read. Others clear enough to see dates, 1942, 1943, and coordinates that matched their land. For the first time, Noah didn't know what to say. He just stared, quiet, eyes reflecting both awe and fear. That night, Clara wrote in her journal by flashlight. Maybe miracles don't fall from heaven. Maybe they rise from the dirt when you finally stop doubting your worth. Noah sat beside her, tracing his grandfather's handwriting with his thumb. I thought he just left us debt, he murmured. Maybe he left you destiny, she said. Outside, the windmill creaked softly. The stars burned brighter than usual. It felt like the land itself had started breathing again. The next day, they drove into the county office. Old files, dusty ledgers, archives that smelled like time. The clerk, an older man with glasses perched low on his nose, frowned as Noah explained. Mineral rights, he repeated. You think they were never sold? Noah slid the documents across the counter. The man studied them, then his brows rose slowly. Well, he muttered. You might be sitting on something mighty valuable, son. These seals are legit. Clara's heart raced. How valuable? He shrugged. Can't say for sure. But gold runs deep. Real deep. On the drive home, they didn't speak much. The sky had turned a bruised orange. The land rolled wide and quiet, like it was listening again. When they reached the farmhouse, Noah killed the engine and sat there a long while. You know what this means? He asked. Clara nodded. It means your grandfather was right. He exhaled slowly. It also means the world that turned its back on us might come knocking again. She looked at him, eyes steady. Then we'll decide who we open the door to. He smiled faintly, that same quiet strength she fell in love with. You really think we can handle what's coming? She took his hand. We handled losing everything. What's left to fear? That night, they sat by the creek again. The same spot where they found the box. Moonlight silvered the water. Noah skipped a stone across it, the ripples spreading wide. Maybe this was his plan all along, to make sure someone worthy found it. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. Or maybe the land just knew who loved it enough to dig deep. He chuckled softly. You always find the good in everything. She smiled. It's the only way to survive people who don't. The wind carried a chill. But beneath it, something else, a quiet hum, the sound of change beginning to stir beneath their feet. Sometimes the truth waits until you've been humbled enough to find it. Life hides blessings in hard soil, not to punish you, but to prove your faith is stronger than your fear. When people bury you in doubt, dig deeper. Because every buried dream still has roots that remember the sun. The news spread like wine through dry grass. By the second week after they found the box, half the town knew something was stirring out by the old Carter farm. It began with a phone call. "Mr. Carter," the county clerk said, his voice low and careful, "there've been some inquiries about your property." Word travels fast when gold's involved. Noah gripped the receiver tighter. "We haven't filed anything yet." "That's what surprises me," the man said. "You might want to move quick. Once folks start digging into records, it gets messy." Noah hung up slowly. Clara watched from the doorway, her apron still dusted with flour. "What's wrong?" He turned to her, eyes hardening. "Someone's already trying to take it." That evening, a black SUV pulled up the dirt road, the kind of vehicle you don't see around their side of town unless trouble's inside. A man in a suit stepped out, followed by a younger associate. Their shoes sank into the mud like they didn't belong there. He smiled, the kind of smile that pretends to be polite but smells of ownership. "Mr. Carter, Mrs. Jameson," he greeted smoothly. "Name's Edward Fleming. I represent the Fleming Mining Company. We heard you found some of our old documents." Clara froze. Fleming, the name from the letter. Noah straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Your company left this land 70 years ago." Edward's smile didn't falter. "And yet, those rights might still fall under our family's portfolio. I'm just here to discuss how we can make this simple." He handed over a business card. "Simple," Noah repeated. "Meaning cheap?" Edward chuckled. "Meaning fair. This land's in disrepair, and I doubt you have the resources to capitalize on what's underneath. I'm offering you a way out." Clara's voice came quiet but steady. "A way out of what?" He turned to her. "Of disappointment, Mrs. Jameson. Digging up the past is messy business. Better to let professionals handle it." Noah crossed his arms. "We'll think about it." Edward nodded, all fake charm. "Do that. But don't take too long. Value shifts fast." As the SUV rolled away, Clara exhaled sharply. "They're scared." Noah watched the dust trail fade. "No," he said quietly. "They're hungry." Days passed in uneasy silence. The rhythm of their small world, the repairs, the laughter, the quiet nights, began to warp under the weight of something larger. Ruth came by with groceries one morning, worry etched in her face. "People are talking again," she said. "Fleming's been sniffing around the courthouse. Word is, he's got friends in high places." Clara frowned. "They can't just take what isn't theirs." Ruth sighed. "Honey, in this town, they don't have to take it. They just buy everyone else's silence." Noah stood by the window, staring out at the fields. "Then we'll be louder." That night, they went through every page again, the letters, the maps, the coordinates. Clara read aloud the words from Harlan's note one more time. "Hold fast. The truth's beneath our feet." Noah tapped the corner of the map. "These markings, they're survey lines. If I can get a proper scan, I might be able to prove where the vein runs." "You still remember how to read those?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Spent years working field drones for investors. They just never thought a man like me could own the land he mapped." Clara placed her hand over his. "Then let's make them regret underestimating you." They borrowed scanning equipment from a friend Noah used to work with, Jace Morgan, a white tech entrepreneur who owed Noah a favor from the old firm. Jace arrived 2 days later in a pickup loaded with gear. "Man, I heard rumors, but I didn't believe it till now." "You really found something?" "Maybe," Noah said. "Or maybe not," Clara added, eyeing Jace carefully. Jace grinned. "Always was the cautious one, huh, Clara?" She gave him a polite smile. "And you always liked showing up when money got involved." He laughed it off, but his eyes lingered a little too long on the papers spread across the kitchen table. By dusk, they set up scanners near the creek. The machines hummed and pulsed, sending data to Noah's tablet. After hours of work, Jace leaned over the screen. "You see that?" Noah nodded slowly. A faint line curved under the soil like a sleeping river. "Looks like a deposit vein," Noah said. "Could be gold." "Could be," Jace echoed, his voice a little too flat. That night, after Jace left, Clara found Noah sitting by the window, scrolling through the data. "Something's off," he murmured. "With the scans?" He shook his head. "With him. Jace doesn't do favors without taking a piece." Clara came closer. "Then we move before he does." The next morning, the town's quiet hostility grew louder. At the diner, whispers stopped when Clara walked in. Someone muttered, "Gold digger," in every sense. Another voice laughed low. Clara kept her head high, paid for her coffee, and walked out. But her hands trembled. When she got back to the farm, Noah was on the phone, frustration sharpening his tone. "Yeah, I understand what you're saying," he told someone. "But if the mineral rights were never transferred, it's our property. That's not speculation, that's law." He hung up hard. "They're blocking me," he said. "The registry office won't file a claim. Fleming's already got a pending review on it." Clara's throat tightened. "They're trying to bury it again." Noah looked out toward the hills. "Then they'll have to dig through me first." 2 nights later, floodlights glared across their land. Engines roared. Noah ran outside barefoot, grabbing a flashlight. 2 trucks sat by the creek, men in safety vests unloading drills. "Hey," he shouted. "This is private property." One man didn't even look up. "We're just doing preliminary testing. County approved it." Noah stepped closer, fury boiling in his voice. "Without my consent?" The man shrugged. "Wasn't your land until the paperwork clears." Clara appeared beside him, phone in hand. "You touch that ground again, I'm calling the sheriff." The men hesitated, then packed up, slow, deliberate, leaving tire marks in the mud like signatures of defiance. Noah watched the trucks vanish. His voice came out low, trembling between rage and disbelief. "They're not even pretending anymore." Clara slid her arm around him. "Let them come. They're just proving your grandfather right, the truth's beneath our feet, not theirs." Over the following week, they became unintentional local celebrities. Some people showed up pretending to help, hoping to partner. Others arrived with cameras, journalists sniffing for a headline. Everyone wanted a piece of something they hadn't worked for. The stress cracked into their quiet life. Meals went cold. Nights grew long. One evening, after a heated argument about what to do next, Clara slammed her notebook shut. "You think I care about the gold, Noah? I care about you losing yourself before we even know what's down there." He looked at her, weary. "You think I'm doing this for pride? I think you're scared. That you're fighting ghosts instead of people." He rubbed his face, the fight draining out. "I just don't want them to take what little we've built." She softened. "Then protect that, us. The rest will find its way." The following morning, Ruth arrived again, this time with someone new. A man in a brown suit, carrying a folder. "This here's Mr. Dean," Ruth said. "He used to work for the mining company back in the 60s. Says he's got something you might want to see." Dean's voice was gravelly, his hands trembling as he opened the folder. Inside were copies of memos and letters, stamped confidential. "Fleming's father," he said, "found a second vein on this property. But they couldn't get full rights because Harlan Carter never sold. So they buried the records." He slid a document across the table, an internal memo dated 1951. "Without Carter's signature, we cannot proceed. Recommend discrediting his claim through tax seizure or property devaluation." Noah stared at it. "They tried to ruin him," Clara whispered. Dean nodded. "And they nearly did. He died trying to pay off debts they engineered." The air grew heavy with a silence that felt sacred and furious all at once. By afternoon, Noah was in motion. He photocopied everything, sent it to a lawyer in Dallas who specialized in land rights. He filed for a court injunction to block all mining activity within a 5-mile radius. Fleming's response came fast, a lawsuit, claiming fraudulent discovery and trespassing. Clara read the papers at the kitchen table, her heart pounding. They're trying to make us the villains. Noah folded the document carefully. Then we'll show them what real ownership looks like. The town divided. Some sided with Fleming, jobs, promises, easy money. Others quietly rooted for the Carters, pride, justice, the underdog spirit. Church sermons hinted at greed. Bars whispered about revolution. The Carter farm became a battlefield of faith and survival. Reporters came again, asking questions, twisting answers. Clara stood on the porch one morning, facing a camera. "What do you hope to gain from all this?" a journalist asked. She smiled faintly. "The truth. That's all we ever wanted." Weeks later, a hearing was scheduled in the county courthouse. Noah wore his only suit. Clara pinned her hair, slipped her hand in his. Inside, Fleming's lawyers filled half the room. They spoke in polished tones about ownership discrepancies, historical claims, and economic development. When it was Noah's turn, he stood, voice calm but steady. "My grandfather worked this land with his hands. He paid every tax they threw at him, until they made sure he couldn't anymore. Now they want to erase his name again. But this," he held up the old letter, "this is proof that truth outlives lies." The room went still. Even the judge looked moved, though he said nothing. That night, back home, Clara wrote in her journal again. "You can't plant greed and expect mercy to grow. Some roots dig deep in darkness. But truth, it always breaks through when light finally finds the courage to show up." Noah sat beside her, exhausted but unbroken. "Whatever happens, I'm glad we found it together." She smiled softly. "We didn't just find gold, Noah. We found proof that what they buried wasn't gone, just waiting for love to uncover it." Outside, thunder rolled far off in the hills. The land seemed to hum again, patient and powerful. Greed is loud, but truth whispers until you're quiet enough to hear it. Some inherit money. Others inherit pain. But the strongest inherit purpose, and turn that pain into proof that goodness can still rise where injustice once ruled. Hold fast. The truth is still beneath your feet. The first autumn storm came early that year, sweeping down from the hills like something half angry, half cleansing. The fields bowed under rain, and the sky roared against the tin roof of the Turner farmhouse. Inside, the air hummed with a nervous quiet. Malik sat by the window, his coffee untouched, while Claire rocked their baby in the old oak cradle. A week earlier, a letter had arrived, thick envelope, government seal. Survey results confirmed what they already knew: the gold vein beneath their land was richer than anyone expected. The word should have meant joy. Instead, it carried a weight. Rumors had already started spreading across town faster than wine through wheat. At the diner, old men whispered that Malik must have cheated his way into fortune. Others said Claire had manipulated him, that she'd returned just to claim the soil her family once scorned. By Thursday, reporters appeared, neat suits, sharp smiles, cameras that captured everything but truth. "Mr. Turner," one asked, stepping through the muddy drive, "how does it feel to be the richest man in Edge County?" Malik's hand tightened around his shovel. "We're not rich," he said evenly. "We're working." The man smiled. "A humble millionaire then?" Claire stepped forward, wiping her palms on her jeans. "We're just caretakers," she said, "of what was left behind." But humility didn't sell stories. The next morning, headlines called them the golden couple, complete with a photo of their baby on the porch. Claire stared at the paper, bile rising in her throat. That same afternoon, the first of her parents' acquaintances came driving down the dirt road. Polished cars that didn't belong among mud and oak. "Claire," cried Mrs. Langford, her mother's oldest friend. Darling, we're just thrilled for you. We always knew you'd land on your feet. Claire smiled faintly. She remembered how this same woman had whispered the night she left home, "That poor girl will come crawling back." Malik stood behind her, silent but steady, a pillar against the tide of false kindness. By evening, 2 more visitors came, a banker and a man in a tailored suit representing a mining company from Denver. He laid out papers, maps, promises of partnership. "You don't have to do the dirty work," he said smoothly. "We'll take care of everything. You just sit back and enjoy your new life." Malik folded the papers neatly, handed them back. "We'll do the dirty work," he said. When the man persisted, Malik's voice sharpened. "My grandfather was buried in this dirt. I'll honor him by standing in it, not selling it." The man left muttering, tires spitting gravel. That night, lightning cracked so close the walls shook. Claire jolted awake to the baby's cry. Malik wasn't in bed. She found him outside, standing near the barn with rain running down his face, shirt plastered to his skin. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. He looked at the horizon, at the thin line of light that sometimes flickered through storm clouds. "Every time I think it's ours, someone reminds me it's not that simple." Claire stepped closer, pressed her palm to his chest. "This land doesn't owe them anything. And neither do we." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the ground. "Sometimes I still hear their voices. The ones who laughed when I said there was gold here. The ones who told me my hands weren't meant to build." She smiled faintly. "Then let them choke on their doubt." He laughed, the first time in days. By October, Malik's quiet resolve began to draw attention he hadn't asked for. The county clerk called about property taxes. Then zoning permits. Then environmental concerns. Each paper meant another line of red ink. At first, Malik thought it was coincidence, a bureaucratic maze. But then Claire's father called. "I heard you're having trouble keeping up with the legal side," he said. "I can help." "My firm." "No," Claire interrupted before Malik could speak. "We'll handle it." Her father hesitated. "Claire, listen. I know we've made mistakes. But this is serious. These people, they'll take everything if you don't play their game." She bit her lip. "You mean the way you always played it?" Silence stretched. Finally, he said quietly, "Not everything I taught you was wrong." After she hung up, Malik exhaled slowly. "He's right about one thing," he said. "They'll try to take it. We have to be ready." So they worked longer hours, sleeping in shifts, balancing mining operations, paperwork, and a baby learning to crawl. The town watched with mixed eyes, envy, respect, suspicion. One night, someone spray-painted the barn. "Go back to where you came from." Claire found it first. The words dripped red like open wounds. She stood there until dawn, shaking. Malik didn't speak. He just painted over it, each stroke slow and deliberate. When the sheriff came later, he said it was probably kids. But both of them knew hate didn't come only from youth, it was inherited like land, passed down like curses. Still, they refused to leave. The storm of paperwork grew heavier. Malik spent days at the courthouse proving ownership again and again. Claire juggled invoices, employees, and baby Eli's fever that wouldn't quit. One afternoon, when Malik was gone longer than usual, Claire drove to town. She found him standing in front of the bank, shoulders tight, face unreadable. "What happened?" she asked. "They froze our account," he said. "Pending investigation." Her stomach dropped. "Investigation for what?" "Fraud," he said flatly. "Someone filed a claim saying the mineral rights were contested." By nightfall, the news had spread. Small-town gossip turned savage. "They bit off more than they can chew," said one voice. "Didn't earn a dime of it," said another. "Gold does strange things to people." Claire closed the curtains. "They're trying to starve us out," she whispered. Malik rubbed his temples. "They can't take what's already ours." But they'll make us fight for every inch. And they did. Weeks blurred into exhaustion. Court hearings, delays, letters stamped in red. Malik's boots wore thin, Claire's voice grew hoarse. Even the air around them felt heavy, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Then one morning, an envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a photograph, Malik's grandfather standing beside three white men in mining helmets. On the back, written in faded ink, "He saved us when the shaft collapsed. Don't let them bury him again." Claire stared at it, tears stinging her eyes. "Proof," she whispered. That evening, they drove to the old courthouse archives, searching through dusty boxes until midnight. Finally, they found it, an unsigned contract, never filed, showing that the company had abandoned its claim after Malik's grandfather refused to sell during segregation. Malik leaned back, eyes wet. "He protected it for us," he said softly. "He knew what it could mean one day." Claire touched his hand. "Then we finish what he started." The lawsuit dragged through winter. Each hearing felt like walking uphill through snow. Reporters vanished. Neighbors turned away. But the baby's laughter, small and bright, kept them tethered to something real. One night, when the heater failed again, Malik built a fire in the old stove. Claire sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, their son asleep between them. "You ever wish we'd taken the deal?" she asked quietly. He smiled faintly. "Every day. Then I remember why we didn't." "Because of pride?" "No," he said. "Because of promise." Outside, the storm thrashed. Inside, the fire hummed like a heartbeat. By March, the final hearing came. The courtroom smelled of paper and tension. Claire's parents sat in the back, hands clasped, faces drawn. The opposing lawyer, sharp suit, cold smile, laid out his claim: Malik Turner was not the rightful owner. The rights had expired. "The gold belonged to the state," he said. When Malik stood to speak, his voice shook once, then steadied. "My grandfather worked this land when no one else would. He was told he didn't deserve to own it, that he was just lucky to live on it. But he never sold. He believed someday the ground would tell the truth." He laid the photograph on the table. Then the old contract. "This is that truth." The judge took a long moment, eyes scanning the pages. When he finally spoke, the words fell like water over drought. "Ownership stands. Case dismissed." A low murmur rippled through the room. Claire closed her eyes, breath leaving her chest like release. Malik exhaled, shoulders trembling. But the victory didn't feel like celebration. It felt like survival. Outside, snow had started to fall, gentle, silent, soft as forgiveness. Her parents approached slowly. Her father extended his hand to Malik. "You fought with honor," he said. Malik shook it, eyes level. "We just told the truth." Her mother touched Claire's cheek. "You were right to leave," she whispered. "Sometimes you have to lose a home to build one." Claire swallowed hard. "Then stay and see what we're building." They nodded. And for the first time, there was no judgment in their gaze. Just quiet awe. That night, back on the farm, the wind settled into a calm whisper. The barn smelled of hay and rain. Malik stood at the creek where the map's old X still marked the ground. He crouched, pressed his hand into the soil, and smiled. "You kept your promise, old man," he murmured. Claire joined him, baby in her arms. "So did you." The moon lit their faces, tired, strong, unbroken. They weren't rich yet. They weren't safe yet. But they were free. And sometimes, that's the rarest treasure of all. Sometimes, before destiny crowns you, it will test if you're ready to carry its weight. The storms don't come to destroy what's meant for you, they come to strip away what isn't. Faith isn't built in comfort. It's forged in the rain, held together by hands that refuse to let go. Spring arrived slowly, almost cautiously, as if it, too, had watched the long battle for the Carter Turner land. The hills were a soft green, the creek sang with thawed water, and the first wildflowers peeked from the soil, tiny sparks of hope in the still damp fields. Claire watched from the porch as Malik carried buckets of water to the newly repaired barns. The farm smelled of damp wood and growing things, of life insisting itself back into corners that had been abandoned for decades. Her heart lifted, not because the gold was theirs, though it would be, but because of everything they'd endured to get to this point. Noah, or Malik as the town had come to call him again, paused mid-step, looking at her with a soft grin. "I never thought we'd see it like this," he said. "Quiet." She leaned against the railing, letting the sun warm her shoulders. "Quiet is the best kind of victory," she whispered. The news of their legal triumph had spread quietly at first. Those who had doubted them now found themselves nodding in respect when they passed the farm on County Line Road. Neighbors who once whispered about Claire's gold-digging ways now waved with genuine smiles. The local radio ran a story one bright morning: young couple revives historic farm, claims long-lost mineral rights. Reporters arrived again, but this time, they didn't chase gossip. They came to document persistence, integrity, and the rare truth that sometimes hard work and honor do win. Claire watched them from the kitchen window, the baby in her arms. Eli cooed, kicking his tiny legs. She smiled down at him. "You'll grow up on this land," she whispered. "And nothing can take it from you, because your parents fought for more than gold. We fought for justice." Malik joined her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "And love," he added softly. "We fought for that too." The harvest of the fields became a new rhythm for them. Not just the literal crops, though the small garden they planted flourished, but the metaphorical harvest, the reward of patience, courage, and integrity. Every day, they walked the land together, their footsteps pressing into soil that once seemed indifferent, now alive with possibility. Their first official test with the gold came months later. Engineers from a trustworthy mining firm had come to take samples, and the shimmer of dust under sunlight confirmed what Harlan Carter had known long ago: beneath the earth lay the vein that had been quietly waiting for someone worthy. The sight of it made Malik's hands tremble. Claire noticed, reaching out to steady him. "It's real," she said. He nodded, swallowing hard. "It's more than real. It's proof that we didn't lose our way, even when everything tried to convince us we had." The baby gurgled from his carrier, as if offering his own approval. Word of their discovery reached further than the county. Investors, curious but respectful, approached with offers of partnership. Unlike the predatory companies from before, these were men and women who understood ethics, who wanted to help bring the farm back to life without destroying the legacy. Malik and Claire, together, negotiated terms that protected their land and their future. They maintained ownership, set sustainable limits, and insisted on preserving the natural beauty that had survived neglect for decades. When the contracts were finally signed, Claire leaned back, exhausted but triumphant. "We did it," she said. Malik, sitting beside her, exhaled a long, quiet breath. "We built something worth more than gold." One warm afternoon, Claire's parents returned. This time, they came not with judgment or envy, but with humility. The polished sedan was gone. Instead, they drove a small pickup, muddy from the road, carrying pies and apologies that seemed to need no ceremony. Her father approached slowly, hands calloused from years of business he thought mattered more than people. We were wrong," he said, voice soft. "I thought you needed guidance. Turns out, you needed courage." Claire looked at Malik. He offered a slight nod, the kind that said he trusted her judgment. Then she turned back to her father. "It wasn't just courage," she said quietly. "It was love. That's what got us here." Her mother knelt beside the baby, who waved tiny fingers at her. "You've built something incredible," she whispered. "We missed so much by not believing in you sooner." Claire let the words settle. She didn't forgive fully yet, forgiveness takes time, but she accepted their presence. It was a start. The farm grew into something almost magical, though its magic was rooted entirely in human effort. New barns replaced old sagging structures. The creek's banks were reinforced. Young oaks and maples lined the driveway. Eli toddled through the fields, stumbling over rocks and grass, watched over by a couple who had learned how to endure. Even the neighbors seemed to change. Gossip turned into admiration, whispers into questions about how to do things right. The community began to rally around the farm, small help here, a loan of tools there, a neighbor offering fresh eggs or a patch of seeds. One evening, after a long day of planting, Malik and Claire sat on the porch swing, Eli asleep between them. The sky burned orange, then purple, then darkened into a clear velvet night. "Do you think we'll ever stop worrying?" Claire asked softly. "No," Malik said. "But we'll always have each other. And we'll always have this land." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I like that kind of worry." He smiled. "It means we care." The first gold shipment came weeks later. Not enough to make them millionaires, but enough to ensure stability. Even more important, it validated everything they had fought for: their land, their labor, their legacy. The town buzzed with awe. People stopped calling Malik that boy and started calling him Mr. Turner. The couple became local heroes not for the gold alone, but for their perseverance. Their story was told at church, at diners, even at the school, as a lesson in courage and moral integrity. Claire noticed, though, that the real wealth lay elsewhere, in trust regained, in relationships healed, and in lessons taught to a new generation. Her parents began visiting more often. They worked side by side with Malik, mending fences and tending crops, slowly learning humility not as a lesson but as a lived experience. Claire's mother baked bread in the old kitchen while her father repaired the barn roof. Their hands, once suited for high offices and clean meetings, were now calloused from honest labor. "You taught me more than I taught you," her father said quietly, handing Malik a hammer. Malik laughed softly. "Then we're even." The baby toddled between them, giggling at the sound of laughter echoing across the fields. By midsummer, the farm had become something of a local sanctuary. Families came for tours, kids ran across the fields, and the creek was full again, glinting like the treasure it held beneath. Claire and Malik spent evenings sitting by the water, teaching Eli about the land, about patience, about love that never falters even under pressure. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, the air smelled of cut grass and rain. Malik picked up a small gold nugget, turning it in his hand. "We could sell this," he said. Claire shook her head. "It's not about selling. It's about remembering." He smiled, eyes reflecting the dying sun. "Then we keep it. As a reminder of what we endured." Eli reached out, tiny fingers brushing the nugget, his laugh bright in the warm evening. The couple had learned that gold could enrich their lives, but love and perseverance had enriched them more. The land beneath their feet was no longer just dirt, it was memory, history, proof that justice could outlast greed. Their neighbors had learned something too. That courage isn't loud. It isn't fast. It's quiet, steady, unbroken, and it rewards those willing to endure storms rather than bend to them. Claire stood at the porch, looking out over the fields, baby Eli in her arms, Malik beside her. Her father appeared with a bag of fresh vegetables, her mother with jars of preserves. They moved slowly, tentatively, learning to be family again. Claire whispered, almost to herself, "We made it." Malik wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "We built it," he said. And above them, the sky, the trees, the creek, and even the land itself seemed to hum in approval. Because sometimes, the deepest treasures aren't buried underground. They're in the hearts of those who refuse to give up, who fight for love, integrity, and truth. Gold glittered beneath the earth, unseen but secure. Above it, laughter, trust, forgiveness, and hope flourished, more valuable than any mineral. True wealth isn't measured by what you hold in your hands, but by what you refuse to let go of. Love that survives adversity, integrity that outlasts greed, and courage that keeps faith when the world doubts you. What is buried in shame or neglect can always be unearthed with patience, honor, and heart. Sometimes, the harvest of truth is quiet, but its rewards last generations.